Rule 9 says, assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. The difference between psychotherapy and advice is when we give advice, we don't really listen to what the other person is saying. Instead, we narcissistically tell the other person what they must do. This gives us a feeling of superiority and also prevents the other person from really talking out their problems. In psychotherapy, there is a general conversation that involves a lot of listening. When you pay attention and listen to a person's problems, they will oftentimes tell you exactly what they are doing wrong and how they plan on trying to fix it. Listening to their plans can be encouraging and more helpful than advice, and we might also learn something about ourselves in the process. People need to talk about their problems because that's how people think. When we think things through, what we are actually doing is creating a simulation of the world in our minds. We then create an avatar of ourselves. We then place this representation of ourselves in the fictional world that we have imagined and play out certain scenarios. If our avatar thrives, then we in turn act similarly in real life and hopefully thrive as well. If our avatar fails, then we avoid acting out the imagined path in real life. This way, we don't have to fail in real life. This ability is one of the more brilliant aspects of the human mind, and we can avoid much suffering if it is used properly. It is not foolproof, however. In order to think things through and create the most accurate simulation of the world and to best narrow down the options we subject our imagined selves to, we need the help of other people. He uses an example of two children talking to each other. The younger one says, "Wouldn't it be fun to climb on the roof?" The older one says, "That's stupid. What if you fall off or dad catches you up there?" In this example, the younger child can now make his fictional world a little bit more accurate and his avatar a little bit wiser, and hopefully draw the appropriate conclusion. True thinking is difficult because it demands that we mentally split ourselves into more than one person with multiple viewpoints, and then those multiple versions of us must debate each other to find out which viewpoint is best. What makes this so difficult is the viewpoint that entails what we actually want to do tends to be much stronger than the other ones. The counter arguments we make against doing what we desire are often weak and not well thought out. This is how we rationalize doing what we want rather than doing what we should. The problem is, what we might want to do may not be what is best for us. This is why talking to someone else comes in so handy. They can provide the counter argument much better than we could and improve the mental simulation we run before making a decision. In this sense, your listener becomes your collaborator and your opponent in a mental debate. When you listen to someone process their problems, you help them without having to say much at all. Oftentimes, just talking things out will reveal hidden truths and meanings that the person having the problem hadn't realized yet. However, it is easy to miss things and leave the picture incomplete, and it is helpful to have someone else to point these inconsistencies out. The psychotherapist Carl Rogers said, "The great majority of us cannot listen. We find ourselves compelled to evaluate because listening is too dangerous. The first requirement is courage, and we don't always have it." Some of you may be feeling that you listen well to people and that you have never seen such results. The chances are very great indeed that your listening has not been of the type I have described. He then suggests an experiment one could do next time they find themselves having a dispute. Stop the discussion for a moment and institute this rule. Each person can speak up for himself only after he has first restated the ideas and feelings of the previous speaker accurately and to the speaker's satisfaction. Now, this technique can be very handy, but it is also shockingly difficult. This is where the courage comes into play. Rogers notes, "Sounds simple, doesn't it? But if you try it, you will discover it is one of the most difficult things you have ever tried to do. If you really understand a person this way, if you are willing to enter his private world and see the way life appears to him, you run the risk of being changed yourself. You might see it his way. You might find yourself influenced in your attitudes or personality. The risk of being changed is one of the most frightening prospects most of us could face." Another advantage of this technique is it can take huge, complex problems that are hard to wrap your head around and summarize it, to trim all the excess fat and to get to the core of the issue. This makes large problems smaller and easier to manage. This process is also how we hone our own ideas and make them better, for we will either learn something new from the other perspective or strengthen our existing ideas in the process of proving them to the other person. Now, it should be noted that all conversations are not created equal. In many conversations, very little listening is actually happening. We can see this in the type of conversations where the speakers continually try to one-up each other's stories, or when both speakers spend the time that the other person is speaking to think of what they are going to say next, rather than listening to each other. Or perhaps the most dangerous is where the two speakers have a debate, but rather than seeking mutual understanding, these set out to prove each other wrong. They may distort facts or take things out of context to prove their point. Anyone who has watched the news or followed politics can see this happening constantly. The highest form of conversation and thought happens when everyone involved mutually explores the ideas being presented and seeks to understand and learn from each other. The ideas that are worth discussing are the ones they actually believe in, the philosophy they follow in life, the beliefs that guide their actions. Nobody's life is perfect in every area, and if your life isn't perfect, then you have something to learn that could make it better. So listen to yourself and to those whom you are speaking. Your wisdom then consists not of the knowledge you already have, but the continual search for knowledge, which is the highest form of wisdom. The Greek philosopher Socrates was considered the wisest man of his time because he always sought the truth, and above all, he knew that what he knew was nothing. So, assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't.